Perfect. All right. So again, welcome guys. So glad you could make it and glad some of you who missed the welcome session can join us now live. That's really, really awesome. I'm always kind of like, oh, I hope people can make it live, So it's so much better. It's so much richer. So really glad to see all of y'all. So tonight is our first content session, which is super exciting. And really kind of when we want to dive into the first theme of the actual challenge. So everybody saw the welcome session. If you didn't attend it, yes, hopefully. All right. If you haven't, go back and watch it. It'll be really helpful to kind of give you an overview of the structure and kind of how it works, your schedule, what to be aware of as we go through the program on the kind of logistics side, operation side. But the content sessions are really meant to dive into the theme, right? So our first theme this week is quieting the world of noise and living love. And we'll be on each theme for 2 weeks. So it'll be week 1 and week 2 will be that same theme. And we'll have a content session on our Wednesday, implementation session Sunday, and then the same thing week 2 and every week, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday. So it's kind of like the week sort of starts on Wednesday, if you will, like the week. When we say week 1, it kind of starts on Wednesday because that's when we have our content session and it goes Wednesday to Wednesday. So hopefully that helps kind of orient you a little bit, like, okay, how does this work? And I want to also check in with each of y'all after watching the welcome session. What lingering questions do you have for me as far as like workbook, accountability pods, all of those kinds of things? I just want to give a couple minutes for questions. If you don't want to unmute, feel free to drop them in the chat. Like while I'm talking at any time, you can always drop them in the chat. But I specifically want to know about accountability pod. If everybody like saw who was in their pod. I know we announced it and I showed you in the call, and then I also posted it in the Facebook group. And I think I linked it. I also linked it in the email that I sent out. So raise your hand if you have not seen your accountability pod, if you don't know who is in your accountability pod. Nice. I don't see any hands. That's a good sign. Awesome. Good. Okay. I had to like scroll through. I'm like, all right, no hands. Okay. So everybody knows. Awesome. Okay. Raise your hand if you have not met with your accountability pod yet. You have not talked to them yet. That's what I thought. Okay. So pretty much everybody. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this week, the goal is really just to introduce yourselves, kind of decide on a format, and then to get a pod leader, to decide on who's going to be your pod leader. Okay. So that's kind of your goal for this call. And it can be 15 minutes if you guys want to do it really quickly. It doesn't have to be a whole hour. If you're like, wow, an hour for this, so many hours, it can be a quick check-in. And like I said in the welcome session, if you cannot find a time that all 4 of you or 5 of you can meet, try Marco Polo. It's a really helpful asynchronous way to kind of meet. Marco Polo also has a desktop version. So if anybody's like, I don't want to use an app on my phone, or I don't really like that as much, it does have a version you can use right on your laptop. Like you pull up your web browser, Firefox or Chrome, and go to Marco Polo. You can use it that way as well. So that's also kind of a nice feature. So that's what I really wanted to say and just like kind of reiterate. And you can go through quickly. So for introductions, it's your name, where are you from, why are you here, just like we did in the welcome session. And you can get as deep or as like surface level with that as you want, right? You can tell your life story, or you can just say, saw it on Facebook, clicked on it, I don't know. And then the what, like, what do you hope to get out of this? Like, what is your goal? What's like orienting you? Because the more clear you are on where you're at, why you're here, and where you're going, the more effective the program's ultimately going to be for you, right? It's kind of just like with anything, with conventional therapy or with school, like with anything, there's always that element of like, you're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? And you're going to get out of it, the more intentional you can be going into it, the more effective and the more powerful, the more impactful it's going to be for you. So that's what you're going to talk about in your accountability pod this week. I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anybody want to unmute and ask any questions about accountability pods? Sweet. Okay. Jesse, maybe.
I'm so sorry. We already covered this. What are the features of the leader? Like what did you already explain this? I'm so sorry.
No.
What is required of the pod leader?
Yes, great question. I was going to say it, but I'm like, I'll see if somebody asks actually. So, very good question. The pod leader, it's really just three kind of responsibilities. So, if you will, it's pretty lax, but one, it's the person who's just going to communicate with the pod. So, the one person who's going to say, like, I'm going to know when and how we're meeting, if it's going to be Zoom every Tuesday at 4, right? I'm going to know that. And I'm going to be like, hey, y'all, either on Facebook Messenger or an email. Just a reminder, we're meeting, Tuesday at 4. Maybe you do it every week. Maybe you just do it once, however your group needs it. So one is just like you're the kind of the communicator, make sure that everybody's on the same page. 2 would be you follow up if somebody's like MIA. It's kind of what I wrote on there is like, this person just has never responded. This person has never come to our calls. Like I'm going to reach out to them individually on Facebook Messenger, email, or, if you don't know how to reach them, you can always ask us, of course. But I'm going to reach out to them individually to see like, hey, how's it going? We just want to like check in. You have never come to our calls or you missed our first call. Hopefully you do it sooner than later. Don't wait until like week 6. So that's number 2 is check in on anybody who seems to be like falling behind or having a hard time. And then 3 would just be the occasional checking in with us. So after like this week, we'll be reaching out to all the pod leaders. And then maybe one other time in the program, we're going to reach out and say like, hey, how's it going? Which again is very lax. This week it's literally just, did you meet? And did everybody come? Like we just want to know how it's going. So that way, if anybody does need more follow-up or if there's some kind of issue, we can address it sooner rather than later. Make sense? So those are the 3 kind of responsibilities. Yeah.
And if we do Marco Polo, is that kind of like instead of saying we meet on Tuesdays at 4, we kind of just have like an ongoing. Okay.
Yeah, that's the intention behind it. But again, totally up to you guys, like whatever works best for your group. I know when I did like a program, an online program, it was not like this, but it was an online program, like same kind of format. We met every week on Zoom at the same time. And we had a Marco Polo. And that was like great because then I could like, if something just came to me really quick, I could just jump in there and be like, hey, does anybody know about this? Or, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Just wondering, whatever. And then when we'd have our actual call, it was more structured. It was like 3 minutes for each person. Let's go through and do our check-in. And it was kind of more formal. And Marco Polo was a nice way to be a little bit more informal, like, hey, here's my son, whatever, kind of like more casual. So I like doing both. But it's whatever works best for your group. We don't want to like police it too heavily. It's just kind of like you should be having a check-in. We call it a check-in every week. And whatever that looks like is really kind of up to you guys. Sweet. Any other questions about accountability pod?
And then where's the contact info for the pod groups? Will that be in the Facebook group?
Yeah, I've got I put it, it's on the Facebook group. I can share my screen here and I'll show you right quick. And then I also sent the link out in the email. So here's our group. Let me remove that. Sorry. Oh goodness. Bye, Jesse. Okay, so down here you go to discussion. And I'll always pin like the important things that like that are always up here up and featured. So I don't know if y'all use a lot of Facebook groups, but they change like how they work like every week. Facebook's like, we totally changed everything. So this is the way it works right now. You like, if you have something you want to post that's like important, you can pin it up in featured. So that's what this is right here. So featured right now are the rules. And then right here are accountability pods. So just click view post. And you've got them here. And so I linked them. Anybody who was already in the group and had a Facebook are like linked, so you can just do right here and you can message them. Anybody who's not, you can look in the accountability pods cohort spreadsheet and just kind of pop that open. And then in here is their contact info. And I believe it's just, it's their email address. So you can reach out this way as well. So either by the Facebook message, if it's possible, you can do an email to start off. And like I said, if this doesn't work, definitely let us know. By the end of this week, we will be checking in with every pod. I mean, it's only 2 of you, so we'll be checking in with both of you and finding out, like, did that work? Do you need more contact info? Do you need us to reach out? That kind of thing. So try that first. Go ahead and reach out that way, and then we'll be checking in to make sure that everybody's connected by the end of the week. Thank you, Brandy.
I just messaged the link.
It's in the chat. Brandy dropped it in the chat. So helpful. Awesome. Okay, so that's accountability pods. Other questions? All right. Other questions not about accountability pods. So about the workbook, about the schedule, what it kind of looks like, what you're going to be doing each week, Facebook group, how to use the Facebook group. I know we had some kind of questions last week, wondering if those have been resolved. Feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute.
I was just curious about the 7 weeks. Like, is there a therapeutic reason for 7, or is it just worked?
I can tell you from my side, and then Isaac might have more to say, but from my side of things, 7 weeks is kind of like a minimum. I mean, psychologically, I know that Isaac could get into this more, tend to be like a longer time to really form like really solid habits. But also once you get up to like the 90-day mark, that's a lot harder for people to commit to for an online program like this. So 7 weeks to me was like the minimum that we could ask people to commit to and still see change without feeling like this is like a long, a huge commitment. So from my side, as far as like marketing it and trying to make it feel feasible and doable for people, that's kind of how we came to the 7 weeks. Plus, honestly, it comes down to content a lot. Like Isaac's like, these are the 3 topics that I absolutely want to do. And so I need this amount of time to dig into them like sufficiently. So yeah. Isaac, do you have anything else to say about the 7 weeks?
Yeah, I guess for me, it was more of a content decision of like, I really like this whole program has a path. And so I wanted to follow that path. And it turned out to be like these 7 different themes. So we have the themes combined into 2-week chunks, but it's 7 different themes that like really lead deeper and deeper. And so I see the whole thing like building and then it goes forward. So for me, it was more based around the themes that we're going to be covering and how they build on each other, how they lead into each other.
Cool. Hopefully that answers your question, Sophie. All right. Any other questions for me, operation side? Anything y'all need? Okay. I'm going to drop in the chat just our email, wholehumanchallenge@gmail.com. If anything comes up, if you're just like, oh, wait, I didn't want to say this in front of everybody, but just send us an email. You can also always DM me on Facebook, just the Shauna Zwick. I check that a lot. So I'm going to put that on there too. So that can be helpful if you just have a quick question. And that's also nice because you can do like voice. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes with a 2-year-old, it's helpful to be like, hey, I need this. And then I can like throw my phone instead of like trying to text. So that's kind of nice to do little voice messages on there. So that's where I'm at. I did want to check in with you guys about the Q&A. I know last time we said we could do a Marco Polo. I don't think I can really do a Marco Polo without having all of y'all's phone numbers. And so I'm like, So I'm going to do one still, and I'm thinking I'm going to do it on Facebook Live, because that way it's already embedded in our Facebook group. And then afterwards it's just in there and y'all can just like check it anytime. I think that's like the most accessible. Is everybody okay with that? Does anybody like think that's a terrible idea and is like, no way, let's not do that? Andrew? Just kidding. Okay. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and do that. I think that'll just be the easiest and most accessible. So I already made an event for it. So it's tomorrow, I think at noon. don't feel like you need to attend, but I'll post a thread on the Facebook group of like Q&A, any questions, and any questions that come my way at all, I will address in that video, like live. So if you come in live, we can interact, but otherwise I'm just gonna be like, hey, here's a question, here's a thing, here's some more explanation. And you can feel free to watch it live or watch it later. So sound good? Okay, guys. The only other thing I wanted to leave you with was it was something for sure. Just blanked on it though. So I'll do the Q&A tomorrow. And then if you have any questions, follow up with me that way. And yeah, I think that's all I've got for now. So I'm going to hand it over to Isaac, and he's going to dive into the theme for this week. Oh, I remember what it was. It's just have a pen and paper. Have a pen and paper. The workbook, if you do have it, either digitally or on pen and paper, there's a spot for content session notes. So that's kind of where we want to be now, to kind of dive into the content session for this week. So, all right, guys.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Shauna. Shauna is really amazing. She like makes this program a program. I just like walk around having ideas, and Shauna's like, all right, let's actually be practical and do something with it. So it's really on her that this thing exists. So thank you. Okay, so tonight I'm really excited to get into the content, and like we're really launching. But the way we're going to start is how this whole program is structured. We're going to start with something really practical that's going to be connected to all the big ideas. So we're going to start with this activity. I call it a mind dump. And you'll see a little spot for it in your workbook if you have your workbook. Otherwise, pen and paper is just fine. But all you're going to do is take pen and paper and write down everything that's on your mind right now. You're not going to share it with anybody. Nobody needs to see it. You can throw it away afterwards. So it's just like really an uncensored mind dump, like you're just writing. And the reason we're doing this is because we just like walk around with a lot on our mind. And it makes it harder to receive something new. And so this is actually one of the simplest and most effective activities I use in therapy. I use myself. You just like put your mind on paper. And so it can be really important things. It can be random things. It can be to-do list things. It can be emotion things. But we're going to just take a couple minutes and dump your mind. And as you're finishing up this, just put a 1 in the chat saying like, my mind's dumped pretty much. So just a 1 in the chat will tell me that you've got everything out, but otherwise take some time and put it down. Let's take one more minute with this. Thirty more seconds. Just finish up your thoughts. Okay, I'm gonna just wrap up. You all must have very full minds. That's it's a good thing you're here. Yeah, so we're gonna transition this. So this mind dump can help us to just like let go of our thoughts a little bit. The paper can be our brains for us, can like hold on to this stuff for us, like, yeah. And now we can have minds that focus on other things. So this is actually really important, and I'm going to start every content call this way, unless I forget, and then you can tell me, and then I'll start do it. We're going to do another practical activity. So this activity is one that is going to be part of the challenge for the week. These are going forward, the Silent Night Challenge. It's a body scan. And so I'm going to walk you through it. So right now you can just close your eyes, get comfortable, and just take really big, deep breaths. Right now you don't need to be anywhere. You don't need to be anyone. You just here with your body breathing. Keep going with those big, deep breaths. And as you're breathing, I want you to focus on your toes. Just feel them, notice them. Still big, deep breaths. Just noticing temperature, little sensations. You don't need to do anything or change anything. You're just noticing your toes and breathing. And then be aware of your feet. So your feet, your toes. Just notice how they're positioned. Are they feeling the ground? Are they in shoes? Again, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to notice anything special. You're just noticing. Kind of just being with your feet, thinking about it that way. Now I want you to try thanking your feet, like thinking about what they do for you, the way they support us, hold us up, bring us around. They have all this flexibility and stability at the same time. I want you to find gratitude or express gratitude in your mind, in your heart for your feet. And we're going to follow this up and just notice your legs, your ankles, your knees, your whole leg, both of them. In this first step, we're just noticing, you're just like being with your legs, you're breathing, still the big deep breaths. And I want you to find that gratitude for your legs, thinking about the power within your legs, the stability, the strength, or even the weakness in your legs, in your knees, in your ankles. We're going to move up to your hips and low back. You can actually hold a lot of tension here. So just breathe, big deep breaths in and out. And be here, be in this part of yourself, your hips, your lower back. Just noticing what it feels like here. And expressing gratitude. And moving up to your stomach. A lot happens in your stomach. You've got all these organs doing all sorts of good, important work for us. Maybe you even feel your deep breathing, expanding and contracting your stomach. You can feel the temperature there. Feel the clothes, how they touch your stomach. So there's a lot going on here. We have a lot of emotional experiences in our stomachs. Our gut reactions. So again, thank your stomach. See if you can see what your stomach does for you and to be grateful for it. We live in bodies. These bodies that we often ignore or don't pay much attention to or give much value to. We use them, but we don't spend a lot of time with them. Don't give them a lot of focus. So follow your stomach up to your chest. You've got this strong rib cage over your lungs and your heart. You can really feel your breathing here. And express gratitude. Notice your chest, notice your lungs, notice your heart. Be there and find that gratitude. Built in such an amazing way of strength and flexibility, kind of protection, but also vulnerability. So even our rib cage, which is so strong to protect us, can also be flexible and expand with our lungs. It's amazing. We have these amazing bodies. Okay, we're going to keep moving. Up to your shoulders and your neck. See if you notice tension here. You can hold so much tension in this part, our shoulders and our neck. It's where we can carry a lot of weight and a lot of that emotional weight, a lot of that stress. Just notice it, be with it. Honor your shoulders, honor your neck. Again, we have this amazing body that's so delicate and strong. So we're going to follow our shoulders down to our arms. Just noticing. Big, deep breaths. Noticing and thanking. Follow your arms down to your hands. I want to see if you can be especially grateful for your hands. Think about how much your hands do for you. How much they work they do. They can prepare a meal and they can hug a friend and take care of a child and type on a computer and connect us with the world. These hands are so dexterous. Really be with your hands. Notice your hands. Be thankful for your hands. We're going to follow the arms back up the shoulders, up the neck. We're going to just spend some time with your head, with your face. Starting with the jaw. A lot of tension can happen here too. Just notice. Be. And around your eyes, your forehead, your mouth, your nose, your ears. We have so many incredible facets in our body. Like, our body is really amazingly built. It's none more apparent than the face, which expresses emotions and can take in the world around us. So many of our senses are just within our face, that the way that we see and know and understand and interact with the world. And I want you to broaden your attention, your awareness to just your whole self, your whole body. We're going to do 3 more big, deep breaths. Just giving thanks. And after the 3rd breath, you can open your eyes and reconnect. Okay. So we're back. I just want to get a little sense in the chat. If this was hard or helpful. So I want you to just put in the chat helpful or hard. Or it could be both, hard and helpful. Okay, I got 1 hard, 1 helpful. Okay. So this week and this next 2 weeks, actually, we're talking about quieting the world of noise and living love. And this is hard. It's hard and helpful. So you're all right. But it's actually so hard for us to be in the moment, to quiet noise, to focus on something really simple, like just a leg or a foot. That it's actually something that takes practice. Simplicity is something we practice. Like we think so often of complexity as something we practice, of like, I need to figure out how to do the hard, complex things. But that simplicity is something we practice. It's actually, it's just as much a skill, and maybe even a more important skill. But that so often we treat it as if, yeah, like it's just kind of uncomfortable, not really that important, move on with my life. And so the challenge of these first 2 weeks is actually a challenge of simplicity, a challenge of simple presence. And so, Brandy, when I was talking about having more time, more energy, and actually a lot of that starts with this idea of practicing simple presence. That so much of our time and energy is focused on all the stuff out there. And it's hard for us to be with ourselves, to be in a moment, because each moment is simple. There's a lot of complexity within this whole planning of life. But each moment is really simple. Not that each moment is easy. Like it's not necessarily easy to get a 2-year-old into a car seat. But like if you're sticking with the moment, there's actually simplicity to it, right? You're just like, you're interacting. And so these first couple weeks, we want to get back to like this really deep fundamental question of like, what is life? An easy question, right? Like what is life? And so I wanted to just start here is like that each moment is simple. I want to keep repeating that. Like it's kind of coming to me too. I'm going to write it down for myself. I hadn't planned on saying that. Because my guess is that when we think of what life is, we think of all of this complex planning and problem solving. And that maybe kind of down the road, after we've like named a bunch of complex problems and big things we need to get over and a lot of stuff we need to coordinate, maybe we get to a moment that we can remember that was just really simple. Like that one time where I was just like on the beach watching the waves. I was present, or I was just laughing with friends, or I was driving and like watching the sunset, like that these moments that are simple, kind of like when we think about what our life is, we don't really give that much weight to them. Like we kind of push them aside and like really emphasize this sense of planning and problem solving and keeping things together. Like what happens with most of our time and energy is it's spent either trying to make life happen or to stop life from happening. I see this all the time with myself. Like I'm either trying to make life happen, and like I've got this plan and I'm like working towards it and like moving all the stuff, and like my 2-year-old isn't here on time and like all this stuff isn't happening quite right. And so I'm like, oh God, okay. And then I need to, if this is a little bit behind, then I need to like make sure this happens. And like, okay, and then this work time got messed up. And so I need to, like, I'm like calculating and recalculating life. Because I'm like so focused on like trying to make life happen. Because I've got this idea of what life is, and I'm going to make it happen. Or I'm on the opposite end trying to make life not happen. Like, I do not want this session to happen. I don't want these things to happen. I don't want this person to find out about this. I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm looking stupid. I don't want this, that. So much time and energy is spent either trying to make life happen or trying to make life not happen. And I guess the good news is that life happens. Life is already happening. Life is already happening within you and around you. And it's important to see it's not just like happening around you, but it's happening within you. So you just like stop any moment in your day and life is happening. You'll find life. Anytime you stop and look for it, you will find life happening. And it's such good news. Because who's making that life happen? When you stop at any moment in your day and life is happening, who's making that life happen? Are you? Like where's it coming from? Who's making life happen? And like this, it's like it's an essential question. It's not just like a trick question. Because we have to like show up to a moment, we have to know whether or not there's promise. And so trying to know where it's coming from helps us to understand if there's promise in life. Because like look at what happens. So you're here at doing Whole Human Challenge. Part like you're here because you found something that seemed to have promise for your life, and you invested in it. You made a choice. You're investing time, energy, money, all sorts of stuff into being here, and already like making that investment like brought about gladness, excitement, because you found something that had promise, and so you were excited to invest in it. Not just like okay, I guess like this hurts a lot to give up time and energy and money, but it was like, I want to do this and I'm excited and I'm like ready to go and like I'm happy that this is starting soon. And because you invest where there's promise, like you have hope, and so you're like, I'm in, okay, like I'm ready. And so we need to come to this question of like, does life have promise? Does a moment have promise? And that comes back to the question of where is life coming from? Like, who's making life happen? All right, is this resonating? Like, just give me an exclamation point in the chat if this is resonating, or a question mark in the chat if this is not quite hitting home, or you don't really know what's going on. Awesome. Okay. So I've got way more to say, but we're starting to get low on time already. So I want to follow a couple more points. We'll see how I can do. So if life is happening and somebody's making it happen, and I'm just gonna throw out this hypothesis that God is making life happen, that like he is actively creating. Then we kind of get into this deeper question of like, okay, but is he creating for me? Does he know me? Does he love me? Like, is he giving this to me? Is he giving this moment to me? And can I trust that? Because we're getting back to this question of, does life hold promise or not? Because we can stop in the middle of the day and find that life is happening. Any moment you stop, life is happening. Does that life hold promise within it? Or are we the ones that have to make life hold promise? Is that our responsibility? Because I know I live a lot of the time as if that's my responsibility. Because I'm trying to make life happen, or I'm trying to make life not happen. And I'm putting a lot of responsibility on myself to make life. but does life hold promise without it being my responsibility? And not to say like I just check out and I'm like, okay, all right, Jesus, take the wheel. Like, because that's not what happens when there's promise. When there's hope, we don't check out. It's not to say like, oh, life has promise, I don't need to worry about it. It's like, life has promise, I'm showing up. And so we get to this other point of just like, okay, what is my responsibility then? And our first responsibility isn't to do life, but to receive life. Our responsibility isn't to do life, but to receive life. And like, I'm looking at you, Andrew, now. Like you were talking to me about like motivation and like, okay, how to motivate. And I think so much of motivation typically comes back to this idea of like, I need to do life. I need to make a life that holds promise. But what if it's flipped? What if my responsibility is to receive life? And then within the promise of life that I'm receiving, I want to live. I know I'm out of time, but I want to end with this story. Because it really stood out to me. So 2 days ago, Blaze had a rough sleeping night, and so none of us slept well. And then he got up really early. And Shauna went and got him. Like it was just, yeah, just a really beautiful gesture of love to me. Like she let me sleep in for a bit. And then they came in after a while, and Shauna climbed into bed and Blaze climbed into bed, and they were kind of like snuggling and tickling, and Blaze was kind of like running back and forth because every time he got close to Shauna, she would tickle him, and so he was just like laughing and giggling. And I'm like sitting there or laying there in bed, lying there. And my brain just started going to all the things I had to do that day. Like I had a full day of clients, I had all this stuff, I had something in the evening planned. And I was just thinking more and more like, I don't have enough energy to live my day. Like this day is going to be too much for me. I'm not going to have enough energy. It's going to be kind of a crappy day. I'm going to get flustered and like just like seeing that day play out. And I'm just laying there in bed, seeing that. Then there was this grace-filled moment. I'm just like, wait a second. I don't need to have enough energy to live my day. I need to have enough energy to live right now. And right now, I'm literally lying in bed and just watching my wife and my son play. And it was just like such a big moment for me because I actually ended up really just loving that and enjoying it. And because he woke up early, we got to have like a slow morning in bed with this playful morning. But it was just like such a big shift for me because I went from this place of trying to make life happen, and I wasn't going to measure up. I wasn't going to have what it took to make life worthwhile that day, and I was already getting discouraged. But then instead, this shift happened where I was just like, oh, I can be here, and I have enough to be here where I'm at. I have enough to be here in bed and watching this playing happen and just like loving it. And so that shifted me so much that I just spent the whole day doing that. Okay, that was kind of a tiring session. Like, but I had enough energy for it. And then I have another session. Oh, and then I show up to it, you know? And what I found was God was so faithful to me that each thing felt like like after each thing I was like, I don't know if I have enough for the next one, but he was faithful. And like I just kept showing up to my own life. And by the end of the day, I had strength for everything and like had so much joy throughout the day. Because I could just receive life. And so I'm telling you these things not from like somebody who's like on the other side, this like magical guru person, but like somebody who's like really living this and wanting to live this. So I was praying right before coming on and like giving God the opportunity to say the words he wanted to say. And like I feel so blessed to be here and to be talking about this. Like I wrote down 2 pages of notes to prepare for this call. I said about 5 sentences of what I wrote down. And the rest has just been like, thank God. So I'll leave it there. But again, I want to hear back. Like, is this resonating with you? We can use the exclamation points again or the question marks. Like, is there a question out there? Or is this really okay? And as we wrap up, and I didn't, one of the things I was going to do was like get into the challenges more. It's explained in the workbook. I want you to like reach out to me if you have questions about it. But could I hear from you of like what's like the biggest thing that resonated tonight? That's like you're gonna like the one thing that if one thing sticks with you, you want it to be this, and you want to be able to take it into your week. So if you could put that in the chat. So Brandy said, waking up each moment and taking the day moment by moment. Andrew said, my responsibility is to be open to receiving life. Sophia said, I don't have to have enough energy for the entire day. I have to have enough energy for this moment, and I'm given the grace to do this. Jesse said, every moment is simple. The whole day is not now. Jenny said, me not making life happen, but to receive it. And Patty said, the trust that God will supply what I need for life each moment. Okay, so this week, the challenges and like the actual challenges like are about living simple life, simple presence that receives life, receives life within us. We receive ourselves and we receive the life around us. So I know I went a little over time, but thank you for joining tonight. And I'm so excited for this adventure we're on. We're just getting started, but it's already awesome. So good night.
Thank you so much, Isaac.
My pleasure.